Bank stocks, believe it or not, the biggest winners today. They're gaining, and some are making some big moves recently. It was up yesterday. Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank. In the meantime, are saying they're planning to cut tax rates. This ahead of the Federal Reserve. The nation's largest banks last night announced that they're going to reward shareholders with $173 billion in new buybacks. I'm going to bring in How Do I Tax the author, Kristin Tate. Kristin, after the financial crisis, so the audience remembers, the federal government set up these stress tests, or so-called stress tests. I think they're a joke. Nevertheless, once these banks pass the stress test, they're allowed to give money to shareholders, and they do it through buybacks and dividends. Almost $200 billion worth announced last night. It's a terrible environment to be doing that, but what does it tell you about this whole thing? I mean, are you okay with this?
Well, first of all, Ally and Goldman seem convinced that the Federal Reserve is going to lower interest rates. So they've taken the unusual step of lowering rates proactively. Lower rates are great for the stock market and capital investment, but this consensus that the Fed is going to cut rates could mean that they foresee an economic slowdown. Now, the current economic upswing has been going on for so long, Charles, that maybe it's time for a breather and a small economic slowdown. And the Fed may be concerned also about all the trade tension going on right now. Now, ahead of 2020, Trump really needs to keep economic growth going. So, the potential lowering of interest rates would be a great thing for him as long as we don't have a recession or a full-blown trade war. Now, the good news is that these banks are buying back their stock, which means that they think their stock is undervalued and they foresee an earnings rise in these shares on the horizon. So this is a good thing.
Kristin, let me jump in because, we've seen where companies have bought back their stocks at the wrong time, right? GameStop started buying their shares back at $56 a share. They're $5 now. IBM wasted tens of billions of dollars on buybacks instead of refiguring the company. Ended up buying Red Hat for perhaps $10 billion more than they had to. So, it's not, some people are saying it's not because they think there's an opportunity, but it's a backdoor way of rewarding company officers and the investment class, of course, with the officers, if they get rewarded in stock. The very first speech Joe Biden gave on this campaign, he mentioned stock buybacks.
Sure. I mean, sometimes the timing is off, but these banks probably would not be buying back their stock so aggressively if they saw a recession coming. So this kind of indicates that even if there's an economic slowdown coming, it probably will be pretty mild.
You talked about the longevity of this economy. Next month, you're right, we break the modern day record. I think in the 1830s, there was the only time it was longer than this. So this is something no American alive has probably lived through, this kind of an economic expansion. How does the president articulate this to the American public?
Well, this is going to be something so critical for Donald Trump to keep hammering away at ahead of 2020, especially, we have this great economy, and yet these 20 Democrats who we have seen and heard from over the last 2 nights are talking about socialism. While we're experiencing this hot economy, Charles, I don't see how any working class person could get excited about these Democrats trying to basically out Santa Claus each other with promises of free health care, free college, reparations, because they know that we need tax increases to pay for all of this stuff.
We certainly do. We would need probably tax increases that just are impossible considering how much has been promised. Kristin, thank you very, very much. Always appreciate that.